My neighbor cut down the 100-year-old oak tree on my property while I was on vacation, and when I confronted him, he handed me a bill for the labor. I bought my house about 4 years ago. It's a nice place, nothing massive, but the selling point for me was the backyard. Specifically, there was this massive, majestic white oak tree right near the back fence. The previous owners told me it was easily over 100 years old. It provided shade for the entire yard, it was home to distinct wildlife, and honestly, it was the soul of the property. I loved that tree. I have photos of my daughter trying to climb it, family picnics under it. It was a fixture in our lives. My neighbor, let's call him Jerry, has always been a bit of a control freak. He's a retired guy in his late 60s who spends all day meticulously manicuring his lawn with a pair of scissors if a blade of grass looks out of place. He's made comments before about the leaves from my oak blowing into his yard in the autumn. I always apologized and told him I'd come over and rake them up, which I did, multiple times. He never seemed happy about it, muttering that the shade was ruining his grass potential or preventing his solar lights from charging fully. But he never explicitly said he wanted it gone. He just complained. That's what Jerry does. My wife and I went on a 2-week vacation to visit her family in Europe. It was the first time we'd been away for that long in years. We got back yesterday afternoon, exhausted, jet-lagged, and just wanting to collapse into our own bed. As we pulled into the driveway, I noticed something felt wrong. The light hitting the house was too bright. It took my brain a second to register the change in the skyline. I ran to the backyard, leaving my luggage in the driveway. It was gone. The oak tree was gone. There wasn't even a log left. Just a raw, ugly stump about 6 inches off the ground, covered in sawdust that was still relatively fresh. The ground around it was churned up by heavy machinery. I stood there, staring at the empty space where the canopy used to be, feeling this physical blow to my chest. I felt violated. It sounds dramatic to say I felt grief over a plant, but I did. I felt gutted. Then I looked over the fence. Jerry was there, hosing down his patio. He saw me, turned off the hose, and walked over to the fence with this smug, self-satisfied grin on his face. Before I could even scream, he told me that he'd done me a huge favor. He said he finally took care of that hazard while we were gone so I wouldn't have to worry about it falling on my house during a storm. He claimed he hired a crew to come out and do it professionally so my yard wouldn't get too torn up. I was speechless. I literally couldn't form words. He then reached into his back pocket, pulled out a folded piece of paper, and handed it to me over the fence. He told me that since he organized the crew and supervised the work, he wouldn't charge me for his time, but he expected reimbursement for the removal service. I unfolded the paper. It was an invoice for $4,500. He told me to just write him a check whenever I got settled in. I just stared at him. I asked him if he was insane. I told him that tree was on my property and he had no right to touch it. He just scoffed and replied that the branches hung over the property line, so technically it was a shared problem, and he solved it. He said I should be thanking him for increasing my property value by opening up the sky. I walked inside without saying another word because I knew if I stayed there, I was going to do something that would land me in jail. I'm sitting here now, staring at this invoice, looking at the stump through the window, and I feel sick. I am in shock. Can he actually do this? Can he charge me for cutting down my own tree that I didn't want cut down? I know tree law is a thing people joke about, but is this actually illegal? Or did he find some loophole because the branches crossed the line? What is my first step here? Commenter 1. Dude, stop posting and call a lawyer right now. Not a general lawyer. Look for someone who specializes in property disputes or specifically timber trespass. In many places, cutting down a tree on someone else's property entitles you to treble damages, 3x the value of the tree. A mature oak can be worth anywhere from $20,000 to $50,000 depending on size and health. He didn't do you a favor. He just handed you his retirement fund. Do not pay that bill. Commenter 2. I'm an arborist, and my jaw hit the floor reading this. Opening up the sky? He ruined your property value. Mature trees add massive value to homes. You need to get an ISA-certified consulting arborist out there ASAP to appraise the stump and the value of what was lost. Do not talk to Jerry. Do not let him come onto your property to fix anything else. Document everything. Take photos of the stump, the sawdust, the machinery tracks, everything. Commenter 3. This makes my blood boil. The audacity to hand you a bill. That is the cherry on top of the sociopath sundae. Call the police non-emergency line too. This is destruction of property. Even if they say it's a civil matter, you want a police report on file stating that you came home to find your property destroyed. It helps the paper trail. Jerry is about to find out exactly how expensive ruining his grass potential really is. Update 1. 2 days later. I read through all the comments on the first post, and honestly, the validation kept me from having a total mental breakdown. I felt so gaslit by Jerry's casual attitude that I was starting to wonder if I was the crazy one. I realized I needed to stop being emotional and start being strategic. First thing yesterday morning, I called the police non-emergency line. I told the dispatcher that my neighbor had destroyed significant property while I was away. 2 officers came out about an hour later. I met them in the driveway and walked them to the back. When they saw the stump, one of them actually let out a low whistle. We walked over to Jerry's door. When he answered, he looked genuinely confused as to why the police were there. I stood back and let the officers talk. Jerry immediately went into his good neighbor act. He told the officers that the tree was a danger, that it was rotting, a complete lie. The stump is solid wood, and that he had verbal permission from me to take care of the yard while I was away. My blood ran cold. I stepped in and told the officer that was a lie, that I never gave permission, and that the tree was healthy. Jerry looked at me with this pitying expression and said that I must have forgotten our conversation because I was so stressed about the trick. He was lying so smoothly it was terrifying. The police, unfortunately, did exactly what some of you warned they would do. They said that since there's a dispute about verbal permission and property lines, this is a civil matter, not a criminal one. They wouldn't arrest him. However, the older officer told me that he would file a report stating that the tree was removed and that I disputed the permission. He looked at Jerry and warned him to stay off my property. Jerry just nodded, looking smug again, clearly thinking he'd won because he wasn't in handcuffs. After the police left, I called a surveyor. I needed to be 100% sure about the property line. I knew the tree was mine, but I needed proofs. I paid extra for an expedited service, and a guy came out this morning. While the surveyor was setting up his tripod and using his laser equipment, Jerry came out to his patio. He started shouting over the fence, asking why I was wasting money when he already sent me the bill. He told me that interest would start accruing if I didn't pay the $4,500 by the end of the month. I ignored him, which seemed to make him furious. He started pacing back and forth along the fence line, muttering about ungrateful millennials and how he improved the neighborhood. The surveyor finished up around noon. He planted bright orange stakes along the property line. The result? The tree wasn't just on my property. The entirety of the trunk was a full 4 feet inside my property line, not even close to the boundary. The only thing crossing the line were a few upper branches, which he would have had the right to trim vertically, but absolutely no right to cut the trunk. I also managed to find a consulting arborist who can come out later this week to do evaluation. I sent the surveyor's report to the lawyer I retained this afternoon. But here is where it gets worse. About an hour ago, I found a note in my mailbox. It wasn't mailed, it was hand-delivered. It's from Jerry. It's a printout of a contract from the tree removal service he hired. He highlighted a section that says the homeowner assumes all liability for property disputes. But the signature at the bottom, it looks like my signature. He forged my signature on the work order to get the tree company to do the job. I feel sick to my stomach. I'm staring at this forgery and realizing this isn't just a property dispute anymore. This man committed fraud to cut down my tree. I'm shaking again, but this time it's not just anger, it's fear. He's willing to go this far over a tree? He forged my signature. Does this change everything? Should I go back to the police with this, or just hand it to the lawyer? I'm worried that if I go to the police, he might escalate things even further. He's clearly unstable. Also, has anyone dealt with a neighbor falsifying documents like this? I feel like I'm in a nightmare. Commenter 1. Holy S*******. This just went from a civil dispute to a felony. Forging a signature on a contract is fraud and likely identity theft depending on your jurisdiction. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Take that document to the police station immediately. This proves he didn't have your verbal permission because if he did, he wouldn't have needed to forge your name. This is the smoking gun you needed. Commenter 2. The civil matter excuse from the cops just evaporated. Forgery is a crime. But honestly, let your lawyer handle the delivery of this information to the authorities. Your lawyer will know exactly how to leverage this to ensure Jerry gets crushed. If you go to the cops yourself, they might still drag their feet, but a lawyer contacting the DA's office or the station commander gets results. Jerry just dug his own grave. Update 2. 1 week later. I haven't slept properly in 5 days. Every time I hear a car door slam or a dog bark, my heart hammers against my ribs. But despite the anxiety, things are moving forward, and the news is, well, it's explosive. First off, I took the advice from the last post immediately. I went to the hardware store and bought a high-end security camera system. I have cameras covering the driveway, the front door, the backyard, specifically the stump, and the side of the house facing Jerry's property. I also put a dash cam in my car that records even when the engine is off. I felt paranoid doing it, like I was living in a spy movie. But considering what happened next, it was the best money I've ever spent. My lawyer, let's call him Mr. S, has been a shark. I handed him the forged contract, and he practically salivated. He told me that we are going for the scorched earth approach. Here's the breakdown of the last week. The arborist valuation. The certified arborist came out. He spent hours measuring the stump, analyzing the soil, and taking samples. He determined the tree was a white oak, approximately 115 years old, and in perfect health before it was cut. Because the tree was so massive and central to the property's landscape, its replacement cost, the cost to replace it with the largest possible transplantable tree plus the loss of amenity value, is astronomical. The base value of the tree, $38,000. Cleanup and soil remediation. Jerry's discount crew compacted the soil so badly with their heavy cranes that nothing will grow there unless we excavate $12,000. Treble damages. In my state, willful destruction of timber allows for triple the value. We are suing for over $150,000 when you factor in legal fees and emotional distress. The tree company, Mr. S, contacted the tree removal company listed on Jerry's invoice. He sent them a terrifying legal letter informing them that they trespassed and destroyed property based on a forged contract. The owner of the company called me personally within an hour, sounding like he was about to hyperventilate. He swore he didn't know. He said Jerry told them he was the owner of the property and that I was his tenant who was away. Jerry signed the contract right in front of the foreman. The owner immediately sent over the digital copy of the contract with metadata, proving Jerry signed it. The company agreed to testify against Jerry in exchange for us not suing them into oblivion. They are now our star witnesses, serving Jerry. 2 days ago, we officially served Jerry with a lawsuit. I watched on my new security cameras from my living room. A process server walked up to his door and handed him the fake envelope. Jerry took it, looked at it, and then threw it on the ground. He started screaming at the server, pointing at my house. I couldn't hear the audio perfectly through the glass, but he looked red-faced and manic. He kicked the envelope into his bushes and slammed the door. Since then, he has been waging a silent war. He hasn't come onto my property, thankfully, but he stands at the property line and just stares. He stares at my kitchen window. He stares at the cameras. He knows they are there. Yesterday, I came out to find he had set up 3 massive floodlights in his backyard, all painted directly at my bedroom windows. Last night was like trying to sleep inside a supernova. I called the non-emergency line about the lights, but they said unless it exceeds a certain decibel level or is physically harming me, it's a civil dispute. Again, the floodlights are driving my wife insane. We have blackout curtains, but the light still bleeds around the edges. Is this harassment? Can I add this to the lawsuit? Also, I'm worried he's going to escalate to physical damage. Should I try to talk to his family? I know he has a daughter who visits sometimes. Would that be crossing a line? Or is it a valid way to de-escalate this before someone gets hurt? Commenter 1. Do not contact his family. I repeat, do not contact his family. If you do that, his lawyer, if he ever gets one, will spin it as you harassing a confused old man. Keep everything through your lawyer. As for the lights, that is absolutely a nuisance. Document it. Take photos of the light hitting your house at night. Measure the lux, light intensity, if you can. Your lawyer can file for an emergency injunction to force him to take them down. It's called light trespass and it is actionable. Commenter 2. The fact that the tree company flipped on him is the checkmate. You have him on forgery, fraud, and trespassing. He's cornered, and that makes him dangerous. The lights are a desperation tactic. He's trying to get you to react so he can say you are the aggressor. Don't take the bait. Buy better blackout shades, the ones that stick to the window frame with Velcro, and ignore him. Let the lawsuit crush him. He's about to lose his house to pay for your tree. Commenter 3. 150K? Oh my god, I would pay to see his face when he reads that figure. But seriously, be careful. This guy sounds like he has nothing to lose. Make sure your wife and daughter are aware of the safety protocols. Don't let your daughter play outside alone right now. If he's staring at the house, he's obsessing. Keep the footage of the staring. It demonstrates a pattern of stalking behavior which helps with getting a restraining order later. Update 3. 3 days later. Things have escalated fast. I didn't think it could get crazier than the forgery, but Jerry has officially lost his grip on reality. After reading the comments, I didn't contact his daughter. I just kept documenting. I took photos of the floodlights and sent them to Mr. S, who is currently drafting a motion for a temporary restraining order, TRO, and an injunction against the lights. But Jerry didn't wait for the courts. Yesterday was Saturday. I was in the garage trying to organize some boxes to keep my mind off the stress. My wife had taken our daughter to the park to get her away from the house of stress. I had the garage door open. Suddenly, I heard a loud hissing noise coming from the side of the house. I grabbed my phone and ran out. Jerry was standing on his side of the fence, holding a canister of industrial-strength weed killer. He was spraying it through the fence, dousing my lawn, my flower beds, and aiming it toward the siding of my house. Hey, I shouted, holding up my phone to record. What the hell are you doing? Jerry looked at me, didn't even stop spraying, and smiled. It was a cold, dead smile. Just killing the weeds, neighbor. Since you can't seem to maintain your property, I'm helping you out again. You're welcome. Get away from the fence or I'm calling the cops. I yelled, backing up because the chemical smell was overpowering. Call them, he laughed, a frantic, barking sound. It's my property line. I can spray whatever I want. You think you can steal my money? You think you can sue me for a weed? I'll ruin you. He then aimed the nozzle higher, trying to spray me. I ducked back into the garage and hit the button to close the door. As the door rolled down, I heard him screaming obscenities, calling me a thief and a liar. I called 911 immediately. This wasn't a civil matter anymore. This was assault with a chemical agent. The police arrived quickly this time, 3 cars. I showed them the video on my phone of him spraying the chemicals at me in the yard. They went next door. I watched on the monitor as they banged on Jerry's door. He didn't answer. They knocked for 10 minutes. Nothing. The officers came back to me and said that since he retreated into his home and wasn't currently posing an immediate threat, they couldn't kick the door down without a warrant, but they took a full report for assault and vandalism. They told me to go stay somewhere else for the night if I felt unsafe. We went to a hotel last night. I didn't want to risk him trying something while we were sleeping. When we came back this morning to check on the house, the smell of chemicals was potent. All the grass along the fence line is already turning yellow and brown. My wife's hydrangeas are dead. But that's not the worst part. I checked the dashcam footage from my car, which was parked in the driveway overnight. Around 3 a.m., a figure walked up to my mailbox. It was dark, but the street lamp illuminated him enough. It was Jerry. He was holding a baseball bat. He stood by my car for a solid minute, just tapping the bat against his palm, looking at the house. Then, he smashed my mailbox. just obliterated it. One swing, then another, until it was flat. Then he turned and walked back to his house. I have him on video destroying federal property, the mailbox, and menacing my home with a weapon. I just got off the phone with the police again. They're on their way to arrest him. They said the mailbox video combined with the chemical spray is enough for a warrant. I'm sitting in my living room, watching the street, waiting for the squad cars. I feel sick, exhausted, and strangely sad. How did it come to this? All over a tree? The police are coming to arrest him. What happens to his house? What happens to the lawsuit if he's in jail? I'm worried he'll make bail and come back even angrier. Should I be looking for a long-term rental? I don't feel safe here anymore. Commenter 1. He smashed a mailbox? That's a federal crime, buddy. The Postal Inspection Service does not mess around. The police will arrest him for the vandalism and assault. But make sure you report the mailbox to the USPS inspectors too. They have their own jurisdiction and are ruthless. As for the lawsuit, it proceeds even if he is in jail. His assets, the house, can be seized to pay the judgment. He is systematically destroying his own life. Commenter 2. This is terrifying. Definitely stay elsewhere for a while if you can afford it. When he makes bail, and he likely will, initially, he is going to be barred from contacting you or coming near your property. But a restraining order is just a piece of paper to a guy like this. You need to push the police to request no bail or high bail based on the fact that he is escalating violence against his neighbors. Show them the bat video. Emphasize the weapon. Update 4. 2 months later. It's been 8 weeks since my last post, and I apologize for the radio silence. My lawyer, Mr. S., advised me to lock down all social media until the dust settled legally. But now, the dust is settled, and frankly, the landscape of my life looks completely different. Let's go back to that morning. I was sitting in the living room, watching the street. About 10 minutes after I posted the last update, the police arrived, and they didn't come lightly. Because of the reported weapon, the bat, and the chemical assault, they treated it as a high-risk situation. They announced themselves over a loudspeaker. Jerry, come out with your hands up. I watched through the window. For a long time, nothing happened. Then, the front door of his house flew open. Jerry stormed out. He wasn't holding the bat, thankfully, but he was screaming. He was yelling that I was a trespasser, that I was stealing his sunlight, and that the police had no jurisdiction over sovereign property. It was pathetic and terrifying all at once. He tried to shove the first officer who approached him. That was a mistake. They took him down instantly. I watched my neighbor, face pressed into his manicured lawn, getting cuffed while screaming that he was going to sue the entire police department. They put him in the back of the cruiser and drove off. That was the last time I saw Jerry. The next few weeks were a blur of meetings and depositions. Criminal charges. Jerry was charged with aggravated assault for the chemicals, vandalism, stalking, and thanks to the smashed mailbox, a federal charge regarding destruction of mail receptacles. Because he had threatened me with a weapon and had no prior record, the judge ordered a psychiatric evaluation. It turns out, this wasn't just grumpy old man syndrome. Jerry has been suffering from a significant cognitive decline, likely frontotemporal dementia, which affects impulse control and judgment. It doesn't excuse what he did. He destroyed my property and threatened my family, but it explains why he went from annoying neighbor to violent criminal so quickly. He is currently in a secure psychiatric facility and has been declared unfit to stand trial in the traditional sense. He won't be coming back to the neighborhood. Because Jerry is incapacitated, his power of attorney, his daughter, had to step in. I finally met her. She is a lovely, exhausted woman who lives 3 states away and had no idea her father had unraveled this badly. When she saw the evidence, the forgery, the video of the bat, the stump, she didn't even try to fight. She looked at me with tears in her eyes and just said, "I am so sorry." We settled out of court to avoid dragging this out. The settlement was massive. They agreed to the full valuation of the tree, $38K, the cleanup costs, $12K, and punitive damages for the fraud and distress. All in all, the settlement was $115,000. Since Jerry didn't have that kind of cash lying around, the daughter is selling his house. The proceeds from the sale will pay the settlement. The for sale sign went up on his lawn 3 days ago. It felt like a grim victory. The yard. I went out to the backyard yesterday morning. It's quiet now. The floodlights are gone. The chemical smell has finally faded, though I had to replace all the sod along the fence line. The stump is still there. I thought about grinding it down and erasing the memory, but I couldn't do it. It felt disrespectful to erase the last remnant of something that stood there for a century. I hired a local chainsaw artist, a guy recommended by the arborist. He's coming next week. He's going to carve the stump into a chair with a high back, featuring reliefs of local wildlife, squirrels, birds, and oak leaves. It will be treated and sealed so it lasts. It won't provide shade, and it won't drop acorns, but it will still be a place for my daughter to sit. We also used a portion of the settlement money to buy 3 new trees. We planted a red maple, a dogwood, and yes, a new white oak sapling. It's only 4 feet tall. I won't live to see it reach the size of the one Jerry cut down. But my daughter might, and her kids might. I looked at the invoice Jerry handed me that first day, the one for $4,500. I kept it. I framed it, actually. It hangs in my garage now. A reminder that sometimes, when someone tries to bully you, they end up writing a check they literally have to sell their house to cash. It's over. We are safe. The tree is gone, but the roots and the law held strong. I'm planning to give the new oak tree a name. The old one was just the oak. My daughter wants to call the new one Phoenix, because it rose from the ashes/stump. Is that too cheesy? Or should we go with something more classic? Thanks for riding this nightmare out with me.